did you know that you have diabetes? And she's like, I had no idea.
Now, you must have felt like you're out of your comfort zone at this point, because like you said, you're a private person, and now he's asking you to film a video and just basically put your business out there.
I'm not thinking anything of it. I just know that I'm not, something's not right, but I can't figure out what it is.
So your employer, how were they with the news? Because some, employers aren't the best.
The next day I call my coworkers and my boss and I say, you know what? I'm not feeling that great. I'm not going to come in. I don't want to get anybody sick.
And not one person from the medical team said, hey, what about a kidney transplant? So below 10%, just to paint a picture here, kidney function at below 10%, and you're out in Paris, living your life, a little bit tired, but not thinking anything of it, many, many, many years later.
Yes. We're looking at like almost 16 years later now.
Wow. And the scary part is you're not the only one this has happened to. Guaranteed.
Consistent, trust, believe, there's a purpose for you.
And at one point, if we're being honest, you did give up. So you've got this new lease on life, you've got your transplant, you're feeling great, COVID kicks in, and now they don't even know if you're gonna survive.
That's right.
Welcome to the Green Table Talk, where we will have open and honest discussion about transplant. I'm your host, Jennen Johnson.
Welcome to the Green Table Talk. I am your host, Jennen Johnson. Today, we have a guest on the show. Her name is Claudia. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for coming. So I know a bit about your story and it just captured my attention. I was told by several people, reach out to Claudia. You have to hear Claudia's story straight from her. So I said, you know what? Let me do this. And I'm so glad that I reached out to you. So once again, thank you for sharing your journey with us. So let's share with our audience, first of all, which organ transplant you had or what you had.
So I am a kidney transplant recipient.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Just like myself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little about yourself, hobbies, sports, anything that you're into, just a little background about Claudia.
Okay, so for me, I love to volunteer. I love getting together with friends, socializing. I work full-time as a florist. So I just like to keep busy and keep active.
Beautiful. Excellent. I've actually seen one of your bouquets. It looks amazing. You do a great job at that. That's like a God-given talent. Just have to put that out there.
Thank you.
So let's just jump to the gusto of the story here. You were diagnosed with kidney failure, or how did that come about? Were you just feeling ill, or tell me the story about that?
Okay, well, a little bit about me is I come from a family that has a background of polycystic kidney disease, and it runs on my paternal side of my family. And so from a very early age, I knew that I had kidney issues, but it really didn't manifest until I was probably in my 20s when the signs really started to show. And at that point, I was monitored by my nephrologist for about 15 years. And it wasn't until I got to my late 30s that my nephrologist started to realize that I was going into end-stage renal failure.
So within this 15 years, you were just on medications at this point, or were you on dialysis, or?
I was never on dialysis during that 15 years. I was just monitored in terms of making sure that my blood pressure remained consistent, that I had a healthy lifestyle, and overall was just generally in good health.
So now you said that was like for 15 years, you were just monitoring and everything was going your way until one day you were told that you were in end-stage kidney failure. When you heard that news, what was your reaction? How did you feel?
Even though I was expecting this to come at some point, it's still always a shock. You're trying to process what your life is going to look like when you're on dialysis. What does that mean for you? Does that mean that are you going to continue to live a long life? There's a whole kinds of questions that come into play. But at that stage, all I wanted to do was just try and have as much of a normal life as I could.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Now, did the thought of reaching out to family members or friends to donate or check and see if they can donate a kidney to you, did that come across your mind at all? Or
at that point, I didn't even really know anything about having a kidney transplant. Even though my family had all, on my paternal side, had all had PKD, most of them had just been on either dialysis or had passed away at a very early age. So I didn't know of anybody that had gone through a transplant, or anybody that even spoke about having a transplant.
So what were your steps at this point? You found out end stage. So what was your initial reaction? What was your first thing to do at this point?
So when I spoke to my nephrologist, she basically told me that I had about 6 months before I would really need to be on dialysis. At that stage, I was getting close to 40. And so she was kind of trying to mentally prepare me for that. So I decided that before I turned 40, I wanted to do one last sort of thing on my bucket list. So I decided to make a trip to Paris.
Okay, that's a nice idea. At this point, did you tell family members what was going on with you, or you just decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Paris, and that's it?
So my immediate family knew that I was going into renal failure, and that I had 6 months. They were fully supportive in me taking my trip. When I did go on my trip, I went with my mom, and she was sort of my travel companion and also just sort of to keep an eye on me. And I went along with two of my best friends. And when I let the nephrology team know that I was going to be taking this trip, and they okayed it, and I went along and did all my usual things. I went and did my blood and urine test before I left. I was cleared to go ahead and travel, and then I took off on my vacation.
Beautiful. How long were you in Paris?
I was in Paris for 1 week.
Nice, very nice. Now you have to share with our audience what happened in Paris.
Okay, well, as I said, I did my blood work and I did my urine samples, and I told my nephrology team I'd be back in about a week, and they okayed it. I got on a flight, went to Paris, and had overall a really great time. I noticed that I was feeling a little bit tired, but I chalked it up to probably like jet lag, just having been working so hard prior to my trip. I figured that's probably what it's all about. But overall, I managed to do the trip relatively well, and had a great time.
And you never thought anything of the tiredness. You just figured, you know what, you're just doing a lot, the whole tour, the sightseeing, etc. So it was just from that, right?
Exactly. And also to remember that I've been monitored for about 15 years. So, having had PKD for that long, I was kind of used to having that constant feeling of fatigue and tiredness. So it didn't really seem out of the ordinary for me.
Yes. So now you're getting ready to go home, getting ready to jump on your flight, come back home.
So I get back to Pearson International, and as I turn back on my cell phone, I see all these messages popping up on my cell phone, and I think I had about 6 or 7 voicemails left for me. And when I listen to them, it is the nephrology team at my local hospital telling me that my blood work had come back in and that my kidney function had dropped significantly while I was on vacation. It had fallen below 10%, and it was time for me to come in and start dialysis right away.
So below 10%, just to paint a picture here, kidney function at below 10%, and you're out in Paris living your life, a little bit tired, but not thinking anything of it. And you're a nephrologist and the team's trying to reach out to you. You got to come in, you've got to come in, you've got to come in. No idea. You're just living your life. When you received those messages, like, was there like panic? Did you just like, I got to go now? Like, what was your thought process at that point?
I'm in shock because I thought that for sure, if I was at 10%, I would have been, on the ground in Paris. But overall, I felt okay. Again, just really tired, but not to the point where I was overly concerned. So as soon as I got my bags, we just made an appointment to go into the hospital and to meet with the nephrology team. And at that point, they said that I need to start prepping to go on dialysis.
Wow. Now, did you discuss like different types of dialysis prior to this, or this is just all coming at you at this point?
So I had discussed at the time looking at different options, I had decided that I wanted to do hemodialysis.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, I wasn't even prepped for a fistula yet, because I thought I had about 6 months.
Yes.
So none of the preparations were ready for me yet. But at that time, the team was asking me how I was feeling. And I told them overall I felt okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just proceeded with going ahead and booking a surgery for me to do my first fistula surgery.
Now, how did that work out? Did the fistula, everything worked out perfectly with that one, or?
So my surgery occurred, and unfortunately, because I have small veins, my fistula didn't work.
Okay.
And then when we found that out, we booked for a second surgery, which was going to be another fistula surgery, but in the other arm.
Mhm.
And after I did that surgery didn't work.
Wow.
And then they decided after that, okay, let's try and do a graft in my arm. And so they went to try and do a graft, and none of those took at all. So I had did a total of 3 surgeries.
And what was the time space for this? Like, was this within?
This is probably within, like, I would say, like a 3-month time period.
Gotcha. Okay. So what happened next? You don't have anything that's working. Your veins are small. So at this point, what takes place? What are we supposed to do?
So at that point, they decided the best possible option for me was to get a catheter. And so I was booked, and I immediately got a catheter. And then once I got my catheter, I started dialysis.
Okay.
Soon after that.
How was your reaction to dialysis? Like, I know some people, after dialysis, they feel, really drained, or some people, they lose their appetite. And I know when I was going through dialysis, I couldn't smell food at all. If I smelled someone else's food or their meal, I just felt nauseous. So did you have any reactions to dialysis?
My first dialysis run, they said to me, oh, after you have your first run, you're going to feel so much better.
Mm-hmm.
When I did do my first run of dialysis, I think I had so much fluid on me that my blood pressure started to drop, and I felt horrible. It was not a very good experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping that was not going to be the rest of my experiences with dialysis, but after I passed sort of the first run, I did feel better, and I found that overall I lost supposedly a lot of weight, but it was really just fluid that was on me.
Yes.
I should say that during those times before I went on dialysis, I really had such a distended belly. I looked like I was probably about 9 months pregnant. So instantly when I started doing my dialysis, the water started coming off, and I started to get back to my normal shape.
Gotcha. Okay. So now, how long did you do dialysis for?
I was on dialysis for a little over 1.5 years.
Okay.
Probably about almost a year into my dialysis, my nephrologist that was taking care of me at the time came over to me and spoke to me and said to me, you're really quite young. I was 40 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Have you given any thought to having a kidney transplant? And I really didn't know much. I asked her, well, what exactly do you mean? I think I'm on the list for, a deceased donor type of thing. And she said, well, what about doing a live donor? And that wasn't even an option for me, because I had never even thought about something like that.
Now, I find that crazy that you're going through this whole process and you see different doctors and different, nurses, and everybody's there, right? And not one person from the medical team said, hey, what about a kidney transplant? You're going through all of this. Like, was their end game, did they think, okay, she could just stay on dialysis for the rest of her life? Like, what was that boggles my mind. I don't get that. How is it that nobody mentioned a transplant to you?
Well, that's a surprising thing. And I've had this conversation before with other people. So during my 15 years when I was monitored, there was no conversation ever about, preemptive transplant, even looking at the option of getting a live donor. There was no conversation at all about this. It was, I don't know if it was assumed that I knew what it was, but there was no discussion. The first time I ever heard about doing a transplant was from my second nephrologist, which is the one that was taking care of me while I was on dialysis.
Many, many, many years later.
Yes, yes. We're looking at like almost 16 years later now.
Wow. And the scary part is you're not the only one this has happened to. Guaranteed someone else out there has experienced the same situation where, you know, literally their life is in the balance and no one has offered this opportunity to, you know, hey, have you thought about doing a kidney transplant? Have you thought, you know what I mean? And that's kind of scary.
It is. It is. You know, it's very disturbing because, you know, there are so many people that are on dialysis and perhaps don't realize that there's alternatives to being rather than being on dialysis. And it's just misinformation.
Yes.
Or lack of information.
Lack of information, exactly. So now she's presenting this opportunity to you, you know, possibly doing a kidney transplant. What happens next?
So at that point, I asked her what needs to be done, and she explains to me that I need to start doing my workup, which is basically doing blood work, CT scans. Basically, they give you a complete physical from head to toe.
Yes.
And that I need to try and see what might be my available options for live donors and to get them tested. So at that point, I'm explaining this situation to my mom, and she steps forward and says that she would like to be tested as a possible donor. So my mom, she goes and says, well, what do I need to do? She goes to her family physician and she explains to him, you know, I want to give a kidney to my daughter. What testing do I need to do? And let's get started.
Moms are amazing like that.
They are. She didn't even
right?
hesitate. She
didn't even hesitate.
I'm doing it.
Yep. Didn't even think twice. My mom did the exact same thing. Like you said, don't even need to ask anybody. Let's go. You know?
Exactly.
But go ahead. Sorry.
So my mom goes and she gets tested, and I'm doing my testing on my end, and I've completed all my testing, but I haven't heard anything about what's going on with my mom. She hasn't heard anything from her family physician or anything from the team. So at that point, I basically decided to take the bull by the horns and ask them the question of what's going on with my mom. You know, she supposedly did all her tests. I haven't heard anything. What's happening? And then at that point, the team comes back and says to me, well, your mom can't be a donor because your mom has diabetes.
Did your mom know that she had diabetes at the beginning?
My mom had no idea she had diabetes.
Wow.
And I told the team this. Yes. I told the team this. I'm like, I don't think she knows. Has anybody talked to her about this? And they're looking at me like her family physician should have told her. So I end up calling my mom and I'm like, well, Mom, I talked to the team, and did you know that you have diabetes? And she's like, I had no idea. Her family physician had been sitting on her files for months and hadn't told her that she was a severe diabetic and that she needed insulin.
Hold on a second. Hold on. For months, the family physician knew that she had diabetes.
That's right.
And when you have diabetes, you're supposed to do insulin and all this. There's a process to this. And nobody mentioned this to her prior to you telling your mom that she has diabetes.
Exactly. So her file had sat on her doctor's desk for months, and no one had decided to tell her that she had diabetes. So the first time she heard about it was when I mentioned it to her. And, you know, at this point, my mom's already experiencing issues with her vision. She's having some physical, you know, ailments. All the while, nobody's told her that she needs to be starting on insulin right away.
And she never assumed anything either, I'm sure. Like, she didn't think it must be diabetes.
No.
Right?
No, she didn't think anything of that.
Wow.
So at this point, you know, I'm already frustrated because this has been months that we've been preparing for this. Things are falling through the cracks. At this point, I can't think of a possible alternative to my mom. I do have a younger brother, but at that point, I wasn't mentally prepared to ask him to be a donor. He's about 9 years younger than myself, and I'm looking at him thinking that, you know, he might later want to get married and have children. And, you know, what if he starts to show signs of having PKD as well? I don't want to put him in jeopardy.
Of course.
So I just decided at that point, that's the end of my journey. I'm just going to resolve to be on dialysis and wait my time out until my time comes up on the deceased donor list.
So let me ask you, how come at this point you didn't think maybe I should reach out to some friends or reach out to, cousins or somebody else? I understand why the brother, obviously. So why not spread out that net just a little bit further to friends, cousins, coworkers, something?
For me, the issue that I had was that I was afraid to share my story. I'm a very private person.
Yes.
I didn't really feel like sharing what I was going through, other than a few group of individuals that knew. Not even my coworkers knew that I was on dialysis. I had to tell my employer because I need to leave 2 days a week to leave work early to go and do my dialysis in the evening. But other than that, I didn't share anything with anybody. I just kept acting like everything was normal. I'm a very private person, and I just felt like if I told people what I was going through, they were going to start to feel sorry for me, and I didn't want pity.
Yeah, I completely understand that. So your employer, how were they with the news? Because some, employers aren't the best when it comes to stuff like that. Their employees taking off, especially on a regular basis, 2-3 times a week. What was your employer like?
My employer was very, very helpful, very understanding. He was trying to encourage me to basically share with my coworkers what I was going through. But I asked him not to. I wasn't ready to. So he did everything that he possibly could to kind of accommodate my leaving work early, and was very understanding.
Good. That's good. So now at this point in time, like you said, you're just going to ride it out. You're at your wit's end, you're feeling frustrated. So what happens now? So
one Sunday I'm at church and I see my pastor, and I'm explaining to him, what's happening with me. He didn't know I was on dialysis, and I'm explaining my frustration of what happened with my mom, and that, it doesn't look like I'm going to find a donor. And just the whole process of being on dialysis was just very physically draining for me. I had moments where my blood pressure would drop significantly, and I'd have to stay past, my time there just to make sure that my blood pressure would be back to normal. I was very, very weak after some runs. I had my mom sometimes coming over to my home, waiting for me after dialysis because I was just too weak to even get into my building. So she would be waiting there to help me. So there was a whole bunch of frustration that I was feeling, and I just wanted someone that I could talk to about it. So I sat down with them, and I'm like, I just need to just share this. So during our conversation, my pastor says to me, well, have you ever thought about doing a video? Just kind of explaining what you're going through, some of your trials and tribulations. I think it might be really helpful to help people understand what life is like on dialysis, and and explain the whole story about you, going to Paris and coming back. I think it's an interesting story that needs to be heard.
Now, you must have felt like you're out of your comfort zone at this point, because like you said, you're a private person, and now he's asking you to film a video and just basically put your business out there, right?
Absolutely. So at the time when we did the video, I did the video just kind of feeling like, what do I have to lose? Let's just do the video. I wasn't sure if I was going to be comfortable enough to necessarily share it with everybody, but maybe just share it with a few individuals. So we did the video, and at that point, we decided to share the video with just the congregation.
Okay.
And then we shared it with the congregation, and the feedback that I got back from the congregation was like, we had no idea what you're going through. How can we help? I had people stepping forward saying, do you need rides to go to dialysis? Can we make meals for you? What can we do to help?
That's beautiful.
So I at that point, I was feeling a little bit more comfortable in sharing my story. And then after a couple weeks had passed, my pastor came back and said, well, you know what? You got such a good reception from the video. How do you feel about posting it on social media? And social media was a completely different ballgame to me, because at this point, it's not just immediate friends and family. This is like sharing it with the world.
Yep. literally is.
And I at that point, I still haven't told my coworkers that I'm on dialysis. So how do I go ahead and share this video telling everybody what I'm going through? So I went and the first step was going to my coworkers and letting them know what was going on with me, because I didn't want anybody to see the video and not have me speak to them prior. So I spoke to my coworkers. I let them know, that I'm on dialysis and that I have to go 3 times a week. And once I told them, I was surprised at their reaction. They were so supportive. They were so understanding. The whole time that I had been stressing about what the reaction was going to be was really for nothing.
Yep. We do that to ourselves. We stress and we fret for literally no reason at all.
Absolutely. They were so understanding. They were saying to me, whatever we can do, just let us know. We're happy to do it. So at that point, I'm feeling like, okay, I'm building up the confidence. You know what? I think I'm ready. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to post the video on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And then we posted it. And then within a couple of hours, I kept seeing a whole bunch of people liking the video. People started to share the video. People were making comments. It just kind of blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, I started seeing some of my friends sharing the video. So in essence, it kind of went viral. And little did I know that video that I posted ended up going as far as Okinawa, Japan. Went to Japan, where there was a missionary that used to attend our church. She was stationed there with her husband, and she received the copy of the video.
Mm.
And at that point, she decided to repost the video on her Facebook page, and the video was seen by her sister who lives in Mississauga.
So it left from your backyard,
Mm-hmm.
went to Japan, other places as well, but went to Japan and came right back to your backyard.
Absolutely. Went back to the missionary sister that's stationed here in Mississauga.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw the video, and the video seemed to have touched her, and she decided to want to go ahead and get tested to be a potential donor.
Now, she doesn't know you. She just knows, she knows your story, but she doesn't know you directly. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, I just kind of going along, doing my everyday thing. And again, a couple months pass, and I get this email from someone saying, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself, and I've signed up to be a potential donor for you, so I'm doing testing, and I'll let you know how things go. Well, I don't know who this person is. I'm not really thinking too much of it. I'm like, okay, sure.
Yes.
Okay, sure. We're fabulous. And then time again kept passing. And then I would get emails again. Oh, I finished this test. I finished that test. So the whole timeline is probably about, I would say, maybe 6 months.
Okay.
And during that time, I received an email again saying, I don't know if you've heard, but the transplant team has decided to stop looking further for donors. We're a perfect match.
Hold on. So this person
Mhm.
is a perfect match. Did you hear this from your transplant team or anybody at the hospital at this point? Or is this your first time hearing this amazing news?
Yes. So I haven't heard anything from the transplant team. I am just making sure that my team is taking care of me and making sure that I stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically done all my tests. I hadn't heard anything. So I'm just thinking, okay, no donors have really come through. It's just a conversation, and I'm still waiting to be on this, hear from a deceased donor.
Do you think that you should have found out from your transplant team though? Like, shouldn't the hospital have reached out to you and shared this good news with you?
Absolutely. They should have,
Mhm.
I think with my whole journey, it's kind of like a comedy of errors where things have fallen through the cracks throughout my whole journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's rather surprising.
Because the same thing happened to me. I didn't find out about my donor from my transplant team or the hospital either. Like, I found out from my donor. when she called me up and told me.
Wow.
That's not good. That's not good at all. Like, it should be the transplant team or the doctors that's taking care of you or someone from there that shares this good news with you. I mean, it's good that you have a donor, but I think, like you said, someone's dropping the ball because that information should have came from your transplant team or someone from your medical team.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And then that's something that we definitely have to look at. How do we fix that? You know,
yes,
huge problem. But yeah, I heard from my donor and she's like, we're a perfect match and they want to book us for surgery. So what day are you available?
I'm available whenever you're ready. Let's go.
Right. So then at this stage, you know, I let my family know that, okay, I have an actual donor.
Mm-hmm.
And instantly my family wants to meet this donor.
Of course.
Just a little bit about my background. I come from a Caribbean background. And
Mm-hmm.
so we come from a large family. And so as soon as we hear good news, it's like everybody wants to be a part of it.
Yep.
So we decided to have this family dinner at a restaurant and we invited the donor to come. And everybody that could possibly come came and they wanted to meet her and see what she was all about and see how she was. And so we were still nervous because at this stage, I'm thinking she's going to back out. You know, this isn't real. You know, she's saying this, she's going through the motions. You know, I'm preparing myself for the worst. You know, at any day and time, she could say, I don't want to do this and I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yeah. Sorry, one question for you.
Sure.
So when your donor met your entire family and everyone's thanking her and everyone's just, you know, reaching out and just expressing their gratitude and appreciation, at any point, did your donor feel kind of like overwhelmed or did your donor feel like, this is not what I really signed up for? Because I've heard stories like that. Actually, one of the previous episodes, there was someone on the show and, you know, there's a lot of gratitude. And she's like, you know, I'm not doing anything that's out of the norm. I'm just, you know, trying to help. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. Did that happen with your donor?
With my donor, she fit in beautifully. She fit in like she was an extended member of the family. We realized in having our conversation how much we had in common. Even though she's a bit younger than myself, our birthdays are days apart. We share similar interests. We share a lot of things in common. So it was almost like we were sisters.
Yes.
We just got along so beautifully. So at that stage, I felt really comfortable with her. My family felt very comfortable with her. It was just a situation, was she going to feel comfortable with us?
Gotcha.
So she left and we were just kind of crossing fingers, hoping that everything went well, that she liked us and that, you know, that she'd still want to go through with it. And sure enough, she emailed back and said, I love your family. I still want to do this. Let's look at possible dates and let's proceed.
Amazing. Amazing. So what date did you guys decide on?
So we decided on May 28th in 2018. And that's when we went and had our surgery. And thankfully, everything went well. My family, they basically decided that, you know what, I'm going in with 2 children. My mom said that. She said, I'm going in with 2 children. My donor was no longer just my donor. She was my mom's, you know, 3rd child. And my mom said, whatever she needs, we're there for her.
Yep.
So part of the journey was that when my donor went in for her surgery, when she came out, she was supposed to have, I guess, her support system taking care of her after she had her surgery. But there were some glitches and some people couldn't come right away to take care of her. So basically, my donor ended up coming over to my home and my mom ended up taking care of both of us at the same time.
Wow. Wow. So you guys literally lived, she saved your life and now you guys literally lived together for however long this period of time was. So your mom's literally taking care of her, both of her daughters at this point.
Taking care of both of us. And so she's doing it all. She's running around feeding, taking care of us. And then this is when, you know, my family kicks in and they're like, what do you need? Do you need groceries? Do you need meals? And they're bringing food for all of us. And even when my donor support system finally comes into play and she goes back home, you know, my family doesn't stop. They still are there. Do you need us to pick up groceries? Do you need us to come over and help you clean your house? Like, what do you need? We're
Yes.
there.
We're there for you. We
We're
got
there
this.
for you. Yeah.
So what I want to do now, because I want to see this video that made your donor decide, you know what? Why not? Let me get tested. So at this point in time, we're just going to see a little clip of your amazing video.
Okay, sounds good. I'm a designer and I'm a florist and a manager. I need to do dialysis because my kidney function has diminished and it's no longer functioning the way it should be. So the condition that I have is called polycystic kidney disease, and it's a genetic disease. So I inherited from my paternal side of my family. Kidney disease does wear on the body. It makes you extremely tired to the point where, at end stage renal failure, you constantly are tired, you need to sleep. You really have to fight with yourself not to get depressed, to try and maintain some normalcy, because if not, your whole life could be involved in just thinking you're sick and not wanting to participate in life, and there's so much going on in the world.
A year ago, one of my greatest needs was to find a kidney donor. My kidney function was down to 7%, and I was on the verge of starting dialysis.
Wow, that's amazing, Claudia. That's amazing. So tell me, when you made this video, I know you were kind of hesitant and things, but did you feel it, while you're making it, I don't know if anything's really going to come of it, or did you think, what? I'm just going to roll the punches and do it and hope for the best? Did you, like you said, you're a private person. So what did you really think was going to happen with this video?
I went into it just wanting to share my story. I wasn't coming out with any sort of expectation.
Yes.
My family and my church, they were all praying. Even I was praying that I would find a donor, but I didn't know.
Yes.
And I had to come to the resolve that if I did find a donor, fine. If I didn't, I had to be able to be comfortable with that decision. But either way, I just went in there just wanting to kind of share my story.
And I bet every day you are so happy that you've made that video.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've had people come up to me afterwards who've been in a similar situation to myself and ask me about my video. And I happily shared it, because I know there are people out there who may be going through a similar journey and are thinking about doing a video as well. So if my video can help them or inspire them to do the same, by all means, I'm happy to share.
Yeah, it could definitely make a difference. Definitely. So within this journey, we haven't touched upon this yet, this little thing called COVID kind of creeps up.
Okay. So COVID occurs, and basically we're all staying home for quite some time. And when the opportunity came back for me to go to work, I headed off back to work. At this point, I'm waiting to get my turn to get my vaccine, but I'm still being cautious. I'm wearing my mask, I'm washing my hands frequently, and doing everything that I possibly can to stay safe. And then I managed to go about a year, and then last April, I contracted COVID-19.
Now, at this point, you weren't vaccinated at this point?
I was not vaccinated, no.
Okay. And what happens next?
So I leave work, and I'm thinking that I just have perhaps a flu. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I go home, and the next day I call my coworkers and my boss, and I say, you know what? I'm not feeling that great. I'm not going to come in. I don't want to get anybody sick. So I'll just take the next day or two and just kind of, rest up, and I'll be back to work fairly soon. And I basically laid on my sofa and within 24 hours, could not get back up.
Wow, that's scary. Now, at this point, what was your kidney function? Do you remember? Was it still 10% at this point?
Oh no, I've had my transplant since then.
Oh, this is after the
This
transplant.
is after my
Okay.
transplant. Yes, yeah,
Wow. So
yeah.
you
So
got
I had been functioning quite well and doing really well, but then COVID hit, and once I got sick, I knew something wasn't right. I knew my
Mhm.
body didn't feel right. Um, I sat there for a couple days trying to, just kind of ride it out, figured a little bit of rest. And it got to a point where I just knew that I was not getting any better. And I called 911.
And so the ambulance comes out, and you said they were dressed in hazmat suits or something of the sort?
So I called 911, and then I'm explaining to them my symptoms, what's going on with me. They said, "Do you think you could possibly have COVID?" I didn't know. At that point, they said they're
That
going
didn't even
to
cross your mind because you're thinking it's probably a flu at that point, right?
Exactly. I'm not thinking anything of it. I just know that I'm not, something's not right, but I can't figure out what it is.
So,
So I kind of struggled to get off the sofa and unlock my door. The EMTs come, and I'm in really bad shape. I'm running a really bad fever. I feel very weak. And when I see them, I'm kind of panicked because they're dressed in complete safety gear. And I'm thinking, what do I have? Also, what are my neighbors going to think? Because these EMTs are coming. They look like they're from outer space. And
that's why I said
I'm
hazmat
panicking.
suits.
So they come, and then they're testing me. They're telling me, "Oh, you have a really high fever. Your fever is like 100 or something like that." It's crazy. And at that point, they said to me, "Well, we're going to try to test and see what your oxygen levels are." And at that point, my oxygen levels were, I think, at 70%.
Wow.
So they said to me, "You need to get to the hospital right away." So I'm rushed by ambulance, and I get to the hospital. And when I get there, the team that's taking care of me says to me, "You know what, you're in pretty bad shape, bud, and we think we need to put you on a ventilator. Because otherwise, if we don't think that you're going to be able to breathe on your own." So I had just enough time to basically call my mom and let her know that where I was, and that basically the team will be contacting her, that they're going to put me on a ventilator, and then we'll just see what happens. And then I don't really remember too much after that. From what I understand, I was put in a medically induced coma, put on a ventilator. I was there in the hospital in ICU for about 10 days, I believe. And the bits and pieces that I know of the story is from what my family has told me. They were able to see me on camera, so they could physically see me, but couldn't be around me. And they said it was really touch and go for me. There were points where they didn't think I would make it.
So you've got this new lease on life. You've got your transplant. You're feeling great. COVID kicks in, and now they don't even know if you're going to survive.
That's right. That's right.
So scary.
So then at that point, my mom has gone. My mom is a prayer warrior. So, she's very fervent in her belief. And so she went back to church, and she's just like, church family, let's pray. Let's pray that she's going to get through this. And Lord, I give you my child. Whatever your will is, I give her to you.
Yes.
And so at that point, it was touch and go. And then probably about my 7th or 8th day, they took me off of the ventilator. I still wasn't able to get out of bed. I'm still
now. Sorry, did they take off the ventilator because they thought it was, the right thing to do at this point because it looked like you could breathe properly on your own? Okay.
Yeah, they thought it was the right thing to do. So they basically said, "Okay, we think we can take her off the ventilator."
Okay.
They took me off the ventilator, and I couldn't speak because my throat was still very raw from having the breathing tube down my throat. But I was very much conscious. I was aware that there were nurses around me. I knew where I was. but my instincts were just like, I just need to see my family. I just need to communicate, and I couldn't communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. That's scary.
It is.
Wow.
So basically, I'm there recovering. During my time there, I had to do some physio. I had to relearn how to sort of walk because I hadn't used my legs in about 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I tried to stand up, my legs just weren't able to support me. And so my journey began. And
Mm-hmm.
in total, it took about 3 months for me to fully recover and feel like somewhat normal.
Mm-hmm.
Everything took twice as long. I would get winded very easily. It was a struggle, but I'm happy to say that I survived and I'm here.
That's amazing. So much factors to this story. So much factors. So do you feel that your story was impacted because of religion, because of, spiritual intervention, or do you think it just happens to be sheer luck and the cookie just crumbled as they made? Like, how do you think this actually all took place?
No, I don't think it's ever just a situation of chance. I think I truly believe that God had a plan for me, that it wasn't my time yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just having the support system of my church family, my family, all praying for me, is nothing short of a miracle that I survived.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I agree 100%. Not chance at all, because like I said earlier, this video was released and went halfway around the world and back again. And here you are today, right? You received your new transplant, you got COVID. We all know that not everybody survives COVID, especially when your immune system is compromised and what have you, but yet still here you are.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a purpose. You definitely have a purpose on this earth.
Thank you. And that's why it's so important to me that I share my story whenever I get an opportunity to, because one, not that I'm looking for some sort of accolades, but I think it's so important to let people know that you're not alone. And number two, and to let people know that, you know what, there's always an opportunity. There's always an opportunity. I had multiple surgeries. I had moments where my catheter didn't work. Mm-hmm. And here I am, 3 years later, sharing my stories and encouraging people and letting them know that to never give up, because you never know what the Lord may have in store for you. So just to be consistent, but trust, believe, there's a purpose for you.
And at one point, if we're being honest, you did give up at one point. You're like, you know what? I've tried, my mom's not a donor, and you were just at your wit's end and you did give up, but God wouldn't let you give up. He had a greater plan, right?
That's right.
Wow. It's just a matter of keeping the faith.
Absolutely. And sometimes even when you can't pray, somebody else will pray for you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always good to have a prayer warrior in your family. Trust me, I know. Always good to have one of those in your family. Wow.
So
well, I am so happy you're on the show. I'm so happy you shared your story with us. I'm happy to see your beautiful face and you're smiling and you're healthy. And it's just amazing that you went through this valley, came through on the other side, and you're standing strong. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And all the best to you, and continue to be healthy and safe throughout this terrible time.
Thank you. Thank you. So at this point in time, I would usually share a little nugget of wisdom just to encourage our audience and just things to, help them through. Today, this nugget of wisdom is simply, we all have ideas floating through our minds, positive ideas. But what we need to do is just stop, listen to ourselves, try to block out all that noise, listen, and act. Act on these positive ideas. You will go so far. So that is your nugget for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for watching the Green Table Talk. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you again next time. Take care.